Welcome back to class, everybody. It's a lovely day in our bloody sandy neighborhood. Topic of the day, spears. So we're going to be talking mostly about spears and glaive polearms, which I got a few on the table there. Spears are often known as the king of weapons because they were one of the first weapons we ever wielded. And you're thinking to me, well, Jake, how the hell is a spear the first weapon? Well, because all you got to do is sharpen a stick, dude. If you crack a stick off a tree at the right angle, you've already got a sharpened stick. No actual sharpening needed. Now, say you take like a knife, all right, out of a rock, or you have a knife on your hip. You take that stick and you just you sharpen it up, and now you've got something you can hunt with. You got something you can defend yourself with. Slap some meat on the end of that. Hold it over the campfire to cook it. A sharpened stick has endless uses in surviving in the wilderness, which is why they were so versatile to early civilizations. Every culture in the world has a spear. I guarantee it. A spear and a club. Every single culture in the world has a spear and a club. Because those were the first two weapons ever invented. And you can't make a sword in the middle of the wilderness. So, next thing I'm moving on that topic of hunting, the Celtic leaf spear. Now, these were often used to hunt boar, used to hunt enemies, used in war. Now, the problem with Celt leaf spears is that they made the head so wide that it's wider than the body, meaning if you stab somebody with this, they're just going to slide all the way down, and you'll get bogged up on their body. The benefit of such a wide head, though, is that if they don't slide all the way down, you get that good stab and you pull back out. That's a very wide cut. I mean, look at the width of that. That is a very wide cut in both directions. That is going to bleed a ton. You land a throw from one of these into a boar, it's done. It's just straight done, man. Getting stabbed with that, you're done. You're going to bleed out long before you ever get off the battlefield. Next on the topic of spears, one of the greatest things about spears, their reach. Holy shit, are spears amazing for reach. And no spear had more reach than the pike. A spear literally with the sole purpose of stabbing somebody 16 feet away. Now this one's not 16 feet, so it's not a true Sarasa pike. But if I stand that down on the ground there, that's at least 10, 12. Well, I'd put it more at 8. 8 or 9, maybe 10. But that's really feckin' long, man. And the reason for that was when we're in a pike phalanx, where it's me, a guy next to me, guy next to him, guy next to him, rows of people behind us sticking their spears over our shoulders. So you've just got a spear here, we got a spear down here, you got spears up here, you got spears angled up here, you got a dude on the ground with a spear down here. That's a wall of tiny spearheads pointed at a charging enemy. They would decimate cavalry, they decimate infantry formations. It's one of the reasons why the Spartans were so deadly. It's one of the reasons why Alexander was able to create the Alexandrian Empire. All right, the fucking Macedonian phalanx was terrifying. Next up is a Scandinavian greatness, the sword staff. Now this is essentially if somebody took a sword blade and just stuck it on a stick. They give you these wide hand grips here for a very important reason, so that if I stab somebody with this monster, they're going to stop right here. All right, they're unlike this guy, unlike that guy, unlike that guy, they're not sliding all the way to my hand. Now, as you can see, other cultures did it too. This one has them. There's a Japanese one called a cross spear that has two that come out right there. It's in the books. There's a lot of beautiful spears that have these little wings here, not only to stop the body, but also when you thrust. Say you're on horseback and you're riding. When you thrust, especially if these are bladed, they're going to catch people even if your thrust misses. That catches them. That's still going to cut and slice. If you're on cavalry and you thrust, they're not going to slide all the way up your spear from that jab you're going to hit, and it's going to be able to roll back out and keep going for the next lance. These were awesome weapons, and the reason I like the sword staff or svardstav so much is the width of its blade. All right, now it's not very thick, but the wide width here with a great taper going to the tip means that you could effectively slice with that weapon. Whoa, Jesus, high hand. You could swing it side to side to effectively slice with it because it's a sword on a stick. Now, moving on to more slicing weapons, these guys are slice entirely. These are no stab, these are slice. I'm gonna get that off the screen. There we go. First one up. Boom. The beautiful glaive gusarme. Now, the reason this is called the glaive gusarme, not just a straight up glaive, which, by the way, that is a glaive. See, where's it? There we go. Glaive. The gusarme is because of that hook on the back. Now I'm gonna reel this in here. This hook on the back, which was used to catch other spears. So you'd come in and chink, you'd catch other polearms with yours and try and disarm your enemy. Now, glaive, for those of you wondering, means the giant blade on a stick. All right, it's essentially a naginata. It's a poleaxe sometimes, but glaives are just giant blades like the Fauch and whatnot. I've used them on stream before. These things would chop more than stab, and because of that leverage you get being way the hell down here, the leverage you get on that swing would allow this thing to take out even plate mail armored knights. You just crush them, man. Just bam, smash them into the ground. Say you're up against a more lightly armored opponent, you can half hold for bam and for boom off the back end here. You can get that whip back, hit down with the front. You could try a stab there because it does have a point, but I wouldn't use it on like plate mail or chainmail. I'd save that kind of stab for someone in like padded armor, like a brigandine. So yeah, this one definitely a nasty bit of work for its ability to chop a man pretty much clean in half. Going to Japan. Now, as I've said before, not the biggest fan of Japanese weaponry in its functionality. Absolute fan of Japanese weaponry in its look and in its aesthetic beauty. And the naginata is no different. That great bell curve there. The naginata was used to take out cavalry, taking either the rider off the horse or the horse's legs off the horse. These weapons would be used in crescent-shaped arcs, like whoosh, coming in like this in the swoop, take out the legs, or you'd swoop high, take out the rider, and as they hit this blade, starts the cut, and then when it hits that sharp curve, see, it just kind of pops off, boom, that last sweep there would just inflict a serious deep cut right there at the end. And it also kept the weapon from getting stuck. Now, with this one, with its such sharp curve, normally naginatas don't have that sharp of a hook at the end. One could realistically use that to stab into somebody and pull them down off their horse, turn the weapon around, and come in with that blade. This thing is definitely a beautiful weapon, and it's definitely a useful weapon, but I find that other cultures have done exactly the same thing. Like this one, the Fashard. Essentially just a thicker naginata. Now this also has two spikes on the back, because this one you are meant to turn it around and slam that blunt end into a rider as he goes by. And what's going to happen is that these two spikes are going to bury themselves through his plate mail, all right, or at least get caught on his plate mail and rip him off of his horse. If you catch him here in the bell, this part could also work to do that. The massive blade here from front to back, massive blade here, has a very thin bevel, a lot like a falchion, but because you're putting it on such a goddamn long stick, when that hits, boom, that whumps. Wow, you can feel the weight in that with the lag. Boom. Oh my god, that went through my table. Hold on. That goes right through the table. Look at that. Holy shit. It hits hard. This thing was used against forest bandits in their leather. It was used against plate mail wearing knights. It was used against cavalry. This thing was the king of the battlefield if you could afford to outfit a good number of soldiers with it. Now, granted, a soldier wielding this long of a weapon, when you actually get into the cut and thrust of the battle, where bodies are next to bodies, they're going to have to choke way up. But that means that this end could get caught on things, this end could get caught. So typically, once the battle got really dense, they'd fucking drop it. Wow, that launched. But they'd drop it, and they'd whip out their backup weapon. Now, I got a Yatagan on me, but most of them would be wielding a short sword of some kind. The soldier's cleaver, what have you. Next up, we're going to go to the Chinese version of the Naginata. If I could reach it. There we go. This is the Guandao. Now, Dao is used a lot in the name of Chinese weaponry. I'm fairly sure it means like blade. So the Dadao would be like a large blade. The Guandao would be pole blade. As you can see, a lot like the Naginata, a nice gentle curve on the end of the stick here. Now, this has serrated back ends, but I guarantee you that is aesthetic over any functionality. I guarantee you it's aesthetic. The beautiful ornate dragon here. Now, this one here doesn't do it in this game, but real Guandaos that you'd see that look just like this unscrew right here so that you can wield this top. Now, a common thing that Chinese soldiers would do when they got bogged down, instead of drawing a sidearm, would literally just take this thing and just crack it on that knee. Just bam! And they break it in half and use this upper half as a dao, slicing and slashing their way through the enemy and holding the other end as a club, which, you know, this big old metal cap here, holding the other end as a club. They'd batter enemies, blade enemies, and they'd be dual wielding, just deadly. All right, moving on next. We've got some spears from around the world. Going to start over here, work our way that way. First up is the European winged spear. These were often used in hunting as well as the battlefield. They're also known as boar spears. These little wings here would keep the pig that you stabbed from pushing its way up the spear to like attack you. They also stopped bodies. Now this one has a very wide head here. Most boar spears were more narrow. This is definitely a war variant of the wing spear. Has a great blade for slicing, not deep slices, but you definitely could slash with it with quick motions, but it is all in all meant for that good stab. Moving on next, we have the Mycenaean spear. This is a bronze head. It is a nice, if you look here, good diamond shape, definitely a solid stab. Not a good slice at all, but the Mycenaeans, as well as the Greeks, were not known for slashing with their spears. They were always known for that strong Damn. They were always known for that strong thrust. Holy shit, I am dealing with some really deadly weapons today. My god. Next up is the spjot. Yeah, the spjot. The spjot is the Norse spear, which was used a lot of times in their shield walls. These were often abandoned when the enemy got too close, and by abandoned, I don't mean dropped. I mean like that. When the enemy was like charging them, they'd be stabbing, thrusting around their goat stag shields. You saw me do a bit of that spear and sword work in our field trip yesterday. So they'd be stabbing around the ends, trying to get in and around. And then as they realized the battle was getting more dense, they just flip it. Oh, I can never flip these properly. They'd flip it around and just wing it. Yeah, like that. And then it would go and it'd stab into an enemy or it'd stab into a shield. And then they'd draw their secondary weapon. And I don't have a Viking sword on me, so that's all right. The reason I got the Yatgan on me is because it's a beautiful cleaving weapon. And I figured, you know, it would definitely be a sword I'd like to use someday. Next up is the glaive. The glaive is a lot like the other polearms I have on the table there. The reason I have it on my spear rack, though, is because this was a Prussian beauty. And due to its alignment of the tip, this one could actually be used to thrust a lot better than any of the glaives I have on that table, due to the way the tip of this blade is shaped. Now, a glaive, as I said, a chopping weapon more than anything else. Let me just line this up. Oh, it didn't do it. Yep, see, that's not going to stick as well as the other one did. Oh well, but you can feel the weight of that chop. Now, it has these bands here, so that way if I block a sword with it, you know, say I block a sword, it's not going to cut my glaive in half. It's going to hit these bands. It might crack the wood, but it's not going to, you know, slice through my handle. It also means that, like, as I'm thrusting in, if a swordsman blocks my weapon, they're not going to block and damage the wood. They're going to block and they're going to hit those bands. While I'm swinging in, say they raise their sword above their head to block, you know, and I'm swinging down, it's going to hit the sword. It's going to hit there on that band when they go to block my blade, and it's going to save the head of my weapon. So this one was definitely designed with durability in mind when it came to the fight. But yeah, you can hack, you can stab with it. This was a nice weapon used by the Prussians, later abandoned for the Bardiche, I think, when it came to slicing capability. Go back on the rack. There we go. Last one up is the Ominoyari. Yep, Ominoyari, which just stands for extra long Yari, like for the blade. See, normally Yaris don't have that long of a head on them. Not a great spear, but definitely longer than a normal Yari. The good thing about this extra long blade is the slicing as well as the thrusting. Excellent straight blade taper on this means that once that head goes in, this is going to go all the way through the body because the rest of the blade's the same width from here down. The downside is that there's a good chance that the body will keep going and get down on your hand. Now, this is here for the same reason that these are here. It's to protect that blade, but also you'll note that this is wider than this. So so there is a chance that if it hits like hard metal, it could stop itself right there at that neck, but I wouldn't trust it. I'd much rather go with, I think it's the Jumen Goyari. Let me just go boop. Scroll on down. Got a boom. Boom. Holy shit. Hi. You are also very long. So this guy. See, they hit here and they get caught, but those are bladed. So even if I thrust and miss, as long as that catches the opponent, it's going to hit with that point and just rip a good chunk of their body out. This is a nasty, beautiful weapon. Probably one of the few like Japanese weapons that I undeniably adore is this design. Again, their aesthetic on their weapons, super pleasing to the eye. I'm going to put you... Actually, you know what? You are a lot like my sword staff, so you're going to go right next to it. All right, now I'm going to get to what I got on my body, and then I've got to go take care of my baby because she's being whiny. I guess she woke up. First things first, I'm going to go with this shoulder. This is the Dori I showed off on our field trip. Has a beautiful blade. Look at that nasty little taper there. So the taper gently widens out instead of being a straight line looping in. So instead of going up and going this way, this one goes down and then comes out. That means that as it widens that hole, there's a... Oh, I just stabbed my own hand with that. As it widens that hole, it's going to get wedged in the body, making it easier to pull back out. But this whole entrance here is going to be absolutely deadly. It's a real clever thing done by the Greeks. Now, I can stick you into the ground because you have a butt spike, so I can just kind of stand here and look at you. So yeah, as it goes into the body, it naturally resists, allowing you to not get wedged inside your opponent. But a hard enough thrust is definitely just going to negate any kind of stoppage. Now, see how wide the blade is here on the sides? Definitely not a slicing weapon in any regards. Fully dedicated to this needle point thrust here. Now, if I flip the weapon around, chunk, there we go. You'll see it has this powerful butt spike here, perfectly circular butt spike. That was so one could stick it in the ground, grab some javelins, and wing them at your opponent. It also, and on our field trip, I showed you, I used it to deadly effect when I stabbed, flipped it over, and got somebody right in the chin. Here's a replay of that. Ugh, butt spike. Thank you, Jake. So yeah, there's a nice little effective kachum there that you can do with that. Definitely my spear of choice. Out of all of these spears, all the ones I've shown today, this is definitely my spear of choice. Next up, the war scythe. So a lot of people think that this is what the Romfilla, which later became the Falks, Or I might have that backwards. This became the Falx, it became the Rumfula. Anywho, that same inverse blade that my favorite beloved Falx is famous for is present here on the War Scythe, which was literally just a farming scythe with the blade that was straightened out to give that upwards curve. This thing has no stabby potential, but has all the slicing hacking potential you could ever need. Able to chop even through that chainmail due to the leverage that you can get with this. That powerful hit is still going to cut and crush under chainmail. Going to go right through a brigantine. Maybe not power through plate, but it could easily take a head clean off your shoulders. This is a nasty weapon. I'm going to use it a bit today. Got nothing on my hips that counts as a spear, so we're going to be bypassing those. We're going to be rolling right along. I'm going to be doing the one at a time kind of training here. Because you guys have all seen how these things can go through armor yesterday on our field trip. So this is more just about what it does to the body. Boom. Boom. And then chop. Oh, I missed. Chop. Chop. There we go. Oh, I took his arm off too. That's gross. Oh, no, I didn't. Okay. Chop. There we go. So yeah, just like my Falx, absolute gruesome cutter. And because of its length, I could reach him before he could reach me. Even with the really long sword that he has here, he stood no chance. Alright, so I'm not going to deal too much with the War Scythe. You guys are already notable about that ish. Moving right on to my favorite, the Dory. Let's get an enemy coming here. And it's over. Wow, same sword. What is it with you guys in this sword? So yeah, one good thrust right to the chest. She done. Now, because I've only got 2 things on my shoulders, I figure I might as well go out of my way and show you guys a few of these other weapons. A few of them have already despawned, like the sharpened stick and the Jumago Yari. So I'm going to use the sword staff next. All of my bad boys up there are gone, so that's a shame. There we go. I'm going to try and get this guy with a slice. There we go. Deep cut to the neck with that hit. Boom. See. Hits really hard, gets stuck in the opponent. Bam. Good stabbing potential. Absolute boss weapon out of Scandinavia. We're going to move on to one of those polearms I was showing earlier. Move it, potion. We're going to move on to one of those polearms I was showing just a little bit ago. This one. Thank you. Just to really show the kind of cleaving potential a weapon like this can get against an opponent. Ooh, sorry there. Chunk. Oh, wow. I thought she was still alive. Boom, head gone. So I hit her once, and that was enough to kill her. And that's because this weapon has a lot of weight coming down. Oh my god. Coming down on it when it hits. You can see it just can't be stopped. It just buries itself into the opponent with that large cleaver's blade. Oh, it's such a nasty piece of work. And that little hook on the back, if I roll this thing over, you know, that would get caught on an opponent's polearm. I can't seem to go fishing. There we go. Nah. Whee! And it would hook opponent's weapons and pull them out of the way. Whoa, put the knife away, dude. So that has been Spears. I hope you guys all learned something good about the king of weapons. In any survival situation, a spear is a good thing to have, whether it's an apocalypse or an army or your town's being attacked. I'm going to do one more little bit here on spears because I feel like it'd be a grave injustice not to. The pitchfork as well, and so I'm going to replace my war scythe with the pitchfork. I'm going to replace my dory with the trident. These are 2 weapons that would normally be wielded by farmers and fishermen, respectively, against bandits, brigands, and enemy soldiers. I see the hooks on this thing can easily catch her weapon or catch her body, getting entangled, taking away her weapon of choice. And then, once I get a good opening, I can go for that gruesome stab. Now that's 4 points stabbing into her body. That is 4 different tiny needle-like spear points going into the body. Come on, do the thing. Yes. Oh, it didn't do it. Oh. So that's the pitchfork used by angry mobs and farmers everywhere to defend their lands. I'm sure anybody who's ever been a farmer fighting a wolf at night was really glad they had a pitchfork with them. As somebody who's had to deal with a bobcat, I was glad I had a hay fork, not a pitchfork. Only has 3 tines on it instead of 4. But I was still glad to have it. It's the reason I'm alive today. Next up, speaking of 3 prongs, the trident. This is the Retinarius trident used by gladiators, but tridents were often used by fishermen. Oh, look at that. She should be dead. That was square in the body. They were used by fishing villages in Greece to defend themselves from the Iliad and Aegean pirates that would attack their shores, trying to get gold, food, women. See, again, just like the pitchfork has those tines on it, they can get caught up on the weapon to really try and disarm or knock your opponent's weapon out of their hand. Come in here, shoom, and then bam! Good thrust to the chest. Boom. Oh my god. I hit right here and it ripped her arm off. Not the greatest weapon of war, really. Aquaman makes it seem a lot more deadly than it really is. Tridents were more or less used by necessity and by gladiators called retinari, who would also use a small net that they would hurl at their opponent to entangle them. Oh, their opponent's entangled in the net. Boom. 3 different puncture wounds in the body. That guy's going to bleed out in seconds. Oh, that really didn't stick into the ground? And on that note, class dismissed.